This is a Let's Talk Church Safety and Security microsode with your host, Paul Buckner. Hey, sheepdogs. So a little bit of an update and just a thought. As of the recording of this video, I have 5 weeks left in the police academy. So if you're following that, that's where I'm at on it. I'm pretty excited about it. They're actually letting us do No Shave November. So that's why I've got some facial fuzz and pretty excited about that because I've been having to shave every day to keep a clean baby face. So learning a lot. I've got some holes knocked in me from doing defensive tactics. I got some bruising in a lot of places. I've noticed that the old man jokes and cracks have stopped. So I probably have earned a bit of a modicum of respect from some of the students, and I've made some great friendships and relationships that I can see surviving the academy, so that's nice. 5 weeks left. It's exciting. We were actually supposed to be doing a range day today. I'm recording this on a Saturday, and we were supposed to be doing a range day today, but it's very cold and it's wet and it's nasty, and I don't mind because I've got to study for an exam Monday, and I've heard we have an exam again Wednesday. So yeah, I covet your prayers in that regard. Say a prayer for me. And then going back a couple steps to my original point, I want to go back and revisit the whole concept of practicool over tacticool. And it's so easy to fall into that trap, and I'm having to remind myself of that now because I'm saving for duty gear. I've got to come up with the belt, the flashlight, and everything, and I'm having to remind myself that I can step up into that gear. Right now, I don't make as much money as I normally do, and I'm limited on what I can do for my clients. Like right now, I'm driving to my P.O. box to pick up checks to order equipment for a client, and I'm having to work the evenings and the Saturdays and things to pay my bills so that I can go to as a friend of mine calls it, to cop school. And but it's easy to fall into that trap. And I know guys that go out and they'll drop $1,000 on duty gear for their department, and I'm going to bring this over to church safety, but they'll drop $1,000 on gear for their department and they don't have that scratch, so they put it on a credit card and then they're still paying on it 2 years later, and they're just making minimum payments or what have you. It's just not a good plan. It's not biblically sound. It's not financially sound. And yeah, your equipment is probably going to be worn out and damaged before you get there. And we can actually start off, and I can actually start off with some used gear. I'm keeping my eye out there for it, and where I don't have to go buy everything new, and I can kind of step my way up to it as I go. Well, why am I talking about all this? Well, in church safety, we can do the same thing to ourselves. We can put ourselves in a situation where we feel like we have to have all of this cool guy gear and equipment, and we really don't. And not immediately. It's more important to know how to use it. And I've said this before, but I don't know how many times I've gone to a class and somebody shows up with $2,500 worth of whatever, and they don't know the first thing about using it. If you're a golfer, you can start taking golf lessons, and you can have a used set of clubs. You don't have to have everything brand spanking new. You don't have to pay retail for everything, and you can stair-step your way up into what you need. If you need to 3 clubs to start, I'm not a golfer. If you need 3 clubs to start your training, then see if you can't get all the 3 clubs, and then you can go buy the expensive clubs once you have the understanding of what you're using. Same thing goes for baseball gear or whatever. And a lot of times you can buy stuff. I've paid 5 and 10 cents on the dollar for gear used. And I was building out my EP bag, my executive protection bag, that I did a video on it. It's been a minute, probably 2 years ago. And it has a folded pistol caliber carbine in it, and with all the accoutrements that go with it, and looks as innocuous as can be. It does not look tactical at all. There's no molly on it. There's no Punisher symbols. There's no nothing. It just disappears. And I've literally taken it into places where it was welcomed and set it down and said, "What would you think is in that bag?" Dude, looks like a laptop bag, man. And it looks like you might have your homework in it. And then I started showing them, it's got soft armor plates that'll stop a 12 gauge slug. It's got, so I can use it as a shield. It's got multiple mags. It's got a substantial amount of medical in it, and it's got a side full pistol caliber carbine. And they're like, "Whoa, I would have never seen that coming." I did not pay retail for that bag. I think I paid $4 for it or something like that. I went through a couple of iterations, and it had enough weight that the muzzle of the pistol had a soft armor body armor plate. I was able to roll up underneath it, and it was something out of a old retired vest I had that I was able to roll up underneath it, and it literally holds it in place. We don't have to put out a lot of money, especially up front. We can circle back around, but we get so tied up on gear, and I'm pointing fingers at myself because that's what I'm having to remind myself of right now, is we get so tied up on gear. I need this, I want this, I have to have this now, that we do ourselves a disservice, and we put ourselves in a bad situation. And we could have all of the gear and not know anything about how to use it. And I don't know how many times I've been in an environment where I've picked up a weapon that somebody else had, that they were okay, mediocre, could not even use, and ran their weapon because I had trained on that platform long before I owned one, or in some cases I've never owned one. Being able to train on that is more important. And we're going through our classes right now, and I'm learning a lot about emergency medical. There's things that I already knew how to do that are very, very useful. And so I'm laying hands on some gear that I actually have a knowledge of, and now I'm laying hands on it, and I'm adding head knowledge to hand knowledge, and I now have a working, functioning knowledge of some of this gear. We really have to stay focused on that. And just to go back to the police department side of things, when we're in church safety, let's go back to church safety and then come back to the police department side of things. We're really not issued gear unless we're in a really high-speed church safety group. And if you are at your church, praise God and thank Him for that, because you're really blessed to be part of a church that issues you gear at all, much less they even have some kind of a budget, because a lot of churches don't. I've really never served with a church that put a lot into the budget for their church safety team. And I've been a part of some amazing churches over the years. And I've gone ad hoc and helped, just kind of been bolted onto a team many times to help with something, or done walkthroughs with churches where the church safety is really, it's a check mark on a box, and they don't really spend a lot of time on it. So if you're part of a group that really does, and there's some out there, I've been blessed to become friends with several folks around the country, and you guys know who you are, that are part of some incredibly high-speed teams. I've told a couple of folks, I would love to serve on your team, because it's taken very seriously by the church. The training is taken very seriously by the team, and a lot of the training standards that they have actually exceed that of a lot of your police departments, even some fairly good sized police departments. So I really respect what they're putting into it. Going back to the law enforcement side, when you have to get your own gear, it's easy to go substandard gear, and I don't want to say that. Get the right weapon for the fight, bring enough gun for the fight, get quality medical, but you can do it ad hoc. I mean, get a handgun, a couple of spare mags. It's not hard to do. Get some medical. Definitely get trained on it, and then you will find over time where you're like, I really like this gun, but I feel like that gun has a better, and it'll give me a better for this. Okay, but if you're sitting there, and this is the danger, and this is where I catch my friends doing this, myself doing this. It's so easy to do. It's easy to be like, well, I want the gun at the range that everybody wants to shoot. Okay, that's pride. That's pride. I want to be able to brag to my friends that I have this many firearms in my multiple gun safes. I don't care about that. He who dies with the most guns still dies, and he doesn't take them with him. It's easy to fall into that trap and get hung up on, I have to have all this cool guy gear. I would much rather, if I never have to use it, that's great, but I would much rather be high speed with my gear, to go back to that again and know what I'm doing with it, because I could run up to a situation and pick up somebody else's gear and run it, disable a weapon if there's one on the ground, then I can't trust that a bad guy's not going to get a hold of it. To be able to do something like that in a pinch, to me, is incredibly important. So you want quality gear, but like in this situation, I've been looking at duty gear, and it's very, very expensive. And so there's things I'm looking at I'm looking at some used solutions. A lot of times you can swap and trade around with folks in the law enforcement side of things. That's something I'm looking at doing. And I want a quality weapon and quality handcuffs, and that's where I'm going to start. And another aspect of this is always be aware that there's positive changes coming down the line. I was at a law enforcement uniform equipment store, and I was looking at their gear, and this lady, and I have an attitude of, not that I know everything, not at all. I'll have an attitude of, I'm here to learn, and I will often say to people, so what questions do I not even know to ask? Or, this is your realm, not mine, so what should I be thinking about and looking at? And especially in an alpha male dominated environment like church security, like law enforcement, like the military, a lot of times there were female staff working that facility. They can feel and guys can be very arrogant towards them, like, you don't know what you're doing. Well, these women have worked in here for years, and they know their world, and they know what they're doing very, very well. So why wouldn't I stop and listen to their expertise, because they know what they're doing? And so I was like, well, this is your realm, not mine. Tell me about some of the stuff that maybe I don't even know to ask you about. And so they were showing me these new handcuffs that are an alloy. They're made by a high-speed company. I forget if it's ASP or if it's Peerless, but it's a pretty high-speed company. It's an alloy of steel and aluminum, and there's a double lock mechanism that keeps the cuffs from continuing to tighten. Well, that double lock mechanism on those cuffs you press it with your thumb and it locks, or finger, and it locks it without having to use the tool. So you're behind the person less time, you're distracted less time. It's something you could potentially do without having to look, because it can be hard to put the back of the pin of the handcuff key down into that little groove in the handcuffs to flip it, especially in low light environments and under pressure. And so I think it's a phenomenal update to the handcuff design, which has largely remained unchanged for years. That's worth spending some money on. And I asked her, I said, well, how are these being received by police departments? And she said, I'll have an officer buy one set, and then within a few months, the department comes back and buys them for the entire department. They're lighter weight. When you carry 26, 30 pounds of gear, they're lighter weight, which is easier on your body, and they're easy to get on. They're durable, they're lasting, so they're not breaking down, and then they're easier to double lock. We also need to be aware that gear changes and improves, so that's where continued training and being humble and realizing, hey, I don't have all the answers and I don't know everything, can really help us to be humble and listen to somebody, because that lady probably is not as good a shot as I am. She might be better. She's probably not got the de-escalation training that I have, which is not nearly what I need. She's doesn't have the church safety background. She's not as big as I am. She's not as physically strong as I am. She probably doesn't have the burgeoning defensive tactics skills that I have and the bruises to prove it. But she knows what she knows, and I can use that resource to better me. And that to me it's part of that practical over tactical, being practical and being humble and listening to people, because we're never going to know it all. And you've heard me beat that drum, but it's so true, and it's so easy to fall into that trap. There's a saying in the law enforcement world that something to the effect of, there's nothing harder than trying to teach a second-year police officer anything, because unfortunately they think they know everything. And we can fall into that trap in the church safety world. I've had people tell me, I've been doing this for 20 years, Paul, there ain't nothing you can teach me. And I mean, they're not directing that at me, but I mean, that's the gist of what they're saying. That's rough, because I've met people that have been doing church safety or law enforcement or executive protection for 10 minutes, that they just got out of training and they learned things in that training that I'd never heard of. And I went and researched it and came back and went, whoa, that was new, that's good, that's amazing. There are always going to be new things that come out. Fundamentals, I think, are largely going to stay the same, but that world is continuing to change, and we need to be wise to it and realizing that that their training and their experience can actually bring a lot to the table. So on that note, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you. As always, remember, it's got to be practical over tactical. It's got to be training before toys. God bless. If you enjoyed this microsode, check out the video and audio versions of the Let's Talk Church Safety and Security podcast.